We're moving on now to the much already mentioned Marlene. And Marlene Douglas is our next speaker. And Marlene has been on my radar for quite some time. I think we first met you as a student access leader. In addition to that, then Marlene wore several hats, and she's going to describe, you're going to doff a few of those hats, aren't you, over the course of the next short while. And now Marlene works with the staff in UCD Access and Lifelong Learning in coordinating our Government of Féine's scholarship programme. But critically, and the reason that Marlene is here today is because of her research interests. She has, her research includes equality studies, social justice, and she wrote a really exceptional master's research thesis on the lived experience of social class in education. Today she's here in her capacity as a scholar. She's going to share that piece of scholarship with us. And I don't think this will be the last you're going to hear of Marlene and her research, but it may be the first you'll hear of it. So over to you, Marlene. Thank you.
Thank you, Bairbre. So just a bit about myself. I'd just like to introduce myself. Thanks, Bairbre, for that introduction. So my name is Marlene Douglas, and as Bairbre mentioned, I work here in UCD Access and Lifelong Learning. And the reason why I'm here today is I recently wrote a master's thesis on my lived experience of social class in education. A little bit about myself. I just want to share a bit about my background into education. Like many in the working class, it wasn't a linear road. I came to UCD as a mature student. I did the university access program. From there I did an undergraduate degree, and then from there I went on to do my master's. Third level education was not the norm for my background or my family or where I came from, so it was a very foreign thing for me to venture into, and it's one of the reasons why I chose to write an autoethnograph as my master's thesis. My research, by doing the autoethnograph method, allowed me to use my research as a way to tell my story, but also to shed light on the sociology and the theories and all this stuff I was learning about, but found hard to identify my individual story in. And that's what I tried to do with my thesis. It does start by delving into theory, and I focus a lot on Bordosian concepts of symbolic violence, and I also apply a moral lens where we're looking at those hidden injuries of class that we don't always see. But for today, my plan is to present to you a couple of abstracts from my thesis and focus in on significant points in my educational journey. And while I present those to you, I'll also have a series of images, some which will be very cute. And I'll explain the images as I go along. And the reason why I chose images is because they tell a story in themselves. And, you know, for me, they're celebratory, but it's also the bit behind the images, the unseen story. And those are the hidden injuries of class that I call it, and many researchers called it. But that's what I want to emphasise, and that's what my thesis kind of emphasises on. So what I want to say in the outset is that I ask you, when you're listening to me and I'm presenting my abstracts, is not to focus on me, the individual, but rather the context of the stories that I'm telling, and how we can analyse this lived experience of class and help us to really understand that symbolic violence and the injuries that we don't see. Much to what Joe has already spoke about, but yeah, that kind of delving deeper further into what classism can do. So I kind of already delved into my background. This was supposed to be my background slide. So that's me as a toddler there. And this is just a little snippet where I emphasised on how class is not just a social concept. It's something that's embodied within us, and it's very individual, and it's a very personal experience. It's our culture, it's our identity, and unfortunately it's something that's stigmatised. And I'm hoping that's what I can share today, is the feeling of that embodiment of classism. So I'm going to start with my primary school education. The photo on the screen is me in my primary school uniform, as promised, very cute. So I'll read now my abstract from my primary school education. My primary school had a book rental scheme, and the cost created a financial challenge for our large family. I remember not having books in the first few days of school and feeling awkward when I had to explain why. There were a few others like us, the poor kids. I didn't realise I was poor then, but I knew I was different. I remember feeling different and embarrassed. Every year, Mum sent us in with a note for the school secretary, explaining that we would have to pay the book fees off in instalments. Mum had a local arrangement, and the school secretary treated us kindly. She gave us the cheapest books first, a school journal, a tables book. We got the basics and we'd pay off and receive the rest later. As I got older, I was given this task of paying off the bill for me and my brother, and I started to enjoy the responsibility. It was routine. Later, I understood that this was a resilience and strategic of my mum and our family, and it's what we had to do to get by. In the end, we would get our school books. Social norms placed that responsibility on us. We were a low-income family and we couldn't afford the books, but we needed them to go to school. The inequality in my education started from primary school. We had to go through a different process to get the same outcome as everyone else, because class is blamed on the individual. It wasn't their fault that we didn't have the money for books, but in reality, these social expectations were a function of class oppression. This experience is just one example of the paradoxes of education for the working class. Next is my secondary school. And there's two photos here which I'm just going to explain briefly before I moved on to the abstract. So I chose these two photos because they tell two different stories. On the right-hand side is a group photo with me and my classmates, and we were what we call the Gold Stars. So in the secondary school that I went to, they had these Gold Star awards every year, and they were given to the students who achieved the best in their school reports, or, you know, did great on the books, I guess. And I won that award for first, second and third year in primary school. I was academically achieving, I was doing well. And yeah, I did well, and I won that award every year. But then the picture on the other side is me graduating from secondary school. But what the pictures don't show is I actually failed the Leaving Certificate. I really struggled in the senior cycle of education. And that's why I chose to share these two pictures. Although they're celebratory and they show something lovely and nice, it's the inequality behind them that you can't see. And when I read that, my abstract now from my secondary school education, you can understand more. I was struggling with school and briefly left secondary school in 5th year. I returned after a few months, and I used my part-time job in the pub to pay for after-school study so I could catch up and sit the Leaving Cert. After returning back to school in 5th year, my year head, an impressionable figure, said to me, "Sure, it was a sigh of relief when you left." I relived that conversation in my head every time I passed my secondary school. I found it hard to conform with the authority of education in secondary school. As a teenager, I didn't like being told what to do, and I constantly challenged authority. But I was clever, and it annoyed my teachers that I had this ability that I just wasn't using. But research recognises that the working class culture can have a general opposition, which is marked by informal characteristics. This non-compliance with the structures of education then results in othering. There was a Tesco down the road from our school, and we were constantly told, well, if we didn't do well, we'll end up working in Tesco. However, without this support, I couldn't do well. I was struggling in some subjects, and this set me back. I understand now that despite my academic ability, I didn't have the social capital to pursue a meaningful education. I didn't do well in my final exams, and not as well as I should have, and not as well as I did in the junior certificate. I didn't have the social means to fully thrive, and I didn't have access to generational knowledge or financial capital for extra grinds. I didn't always receive the respect I needed to fully thrive in school. However, the important thing was that I finished school. I was the second of my mother's 9 children to complete the Leaving Certificate, which was a proud achievement for me and my family, regardless of any grades. So, this There's a series of events with certificates here. I'm going to talk a bit about my experience in further education. I'm just going to take a drink of water. Just to say, the photo on the screen is me and my mum and my graduation from further education. After school, I continued to work in the pub 4 nights a week, and I also went to the Liberties College full-time for 2 years to study youth and community studies. During my course, my classmates spoke about further studies, about applying to Maynooth to do a level 8 after the course. I didn't really know what they meant. No one in my family had a degree, and I remember thinking, university, that's not for me. I just assumed that people with money went to university, and my goal was always to be working, just to have enough to support myself. Education was more like this nice extra thing. I didn't realise that a degree could open doors for me. When the course was ending, I was looking for jobs in my local youth service. I was volunteering with them at the time, and they gave me occasional paid employment, but funding had depleted after the recession, so there wasn't that many jobs. I did a few interviews, and eventually I gave up looking. I finished my course, and just as my secondary school educators had expected of me, I got a full-time job in Tesco. But I was happy because I was earning money. And then my journey to third level. So I'm going to start by reading an abstract from my experience in the University Access Programme here in UCD. Again, another graduation. At 26 years old, I was working in childcare. I booked an appointment with the local free adult education guidance service. I told him how I wasn't happy and I knew I was smart, but I had felt so unfulfilled working in childcare. He told me how I could do a university access programme, a part-time course where I could see what university was like. It sounded great, a way I could figure out what it was that I wanted to do. He made a phone call. He knew the coordinator of the access programme at the time. The course had already started, so I'd be joining a week late, she said. I'd need to do the online registration straight away and get myself to class in UCD the very next day. I did just that. I became a UCD student overnight. I loved the access programme. I loved all this new knowledge and being a part of this group who are bettering themselves. I talk about this in my thesis. I use that term, bettering themselves, a lot. And it's not to say that I don't think the working class group are not better, but it was just something we were always encouraged to do, to constantly better ourselves. In the access programme, the majority were working class like me, and I fitted in there. I worked full time in my child-minded job, and I went to UCD 2 evenings a week for a year. So next is my journey into my degree. And the picture there is my graduation from my degree programme. So I completed the access programme and I got offered my first choice on the CAO the following year, a degree in law with social justice. When I started my degree, it was then that I entered a new world, one I never knew existed or that a girl like me could be a part of. Third level education was completely foreign to me, to my background, to my community and to my family. I felt different to the people in UCD, and I had felt safe in the access programme. The students were like me, but when I started the degree, no one sounded like me, and I could see and feel the difference. I was 27 years old, and my peers were mostly 18-year-olds coming directly through the traditional Leaving Cert route. They were children of lawyers and other professionals. They spoke about their near 600 Leaving Cert points they had achieved to get in. I, however, had simply got in through an access programme, like I had come through the back door when no one was looking. Working class college students can feel inadequate from the culture practices in college, by the educators and the more privileged peers. The majority of my first lectures were addressed with opening remarks like, "The Leaving Certificate's over now," or "You're not in school anymore." I had finished school almost 10 years ago by then. They weren't talking to me. I had worked hard too. I had earned my place, and even though I knew I had put in the work, I didn't take the traditional route, and therefore I was the other. I'm going to continue on with another piece from my bachelor's degree. I grew up in a financially insecure household. When we struggled, we relied on charities like the St. Vincent de Paul, and our main source of income was the social welfare. The Vincent de Paul would deliver toys to us at Christmas, and I remember seeing those given trees on their annual Christmas appeal in their local shopping centre. The tags would read, "Girl, aged 6 to 9." I knew one of them was me. They would also give us food vouchers when we struggled, and they even funded a caravan park holiday for us in Wexford several times during my childhood. Without that charity, my childhood would have been so much different. And I'm so grateful for the positive memories that they gave us, an experience that families with financial security might take for granted. In the first few weeks of my law degree, my classmates and I were chatting before our lecture, and one student was talking about how annoying it was that all those knackers from Dublin would go on their holidays in Wexford. I was one of those people they were talking about. Their language and perception of me and my social group was so undignifying it made me angry. But at the same time, it reinforced my experience of difference in the university. Our family holidays in Wexford were only made possible through charity, a life experience we would have otherwise never had. Those were some of my happiest childhood memories, now tainted with indignity. If only they could have understood it that way. This reinforced that I was the other, the poor person who relied on charity, the knacker from Dublin. I knew then that with my background and my working class accent that I was probably and always will be that knacker from Dublin to so many people in the university. Despite the challenges, I enjoyed my undergraduate studies. I enjoyed learning and I developed a passion for academia. I was thick-skinned for my upbringing and I didn't let the negatives hold me back. I worked in retail on a minimum wage job, almost 30 hours a week, and rarely missed a lecture. This was tiring, but a real probability for many working class students, I would argue. At 31 years old, I graduated with my bachelor's degree. My older sister was doing a degree at the same time as me and had just graduated before me. I'll never forget the pride on my mum's face as I walked up in my cap and gown to receive my degree. I was now the second of her 9 children to achieve a degree. That alone was worth it all. So that is the end of the abstracts that I'm going to share, and I've just ended with a photo on me graduating from my master's to continue with the team. I don't delve into my experience in master's education because I was writing it while doing my master's. I'll just take a drink of water. So I guess why are we talking about class, and why am I talking about class, or why are we here today? And for me, I guess sharing my story shows you that, one, it's not linear, but two, a lot of the things that got me where I am today was by chance, or the right person at the right time. And I don't think education should be that way. I think no matter what your background, we should all have the same chance in life. And for me, I guess I was one of the lucky ones from my minority group. And the pictures that I've chosen to share here, on the bottom is my family. It's cut off there by the caption, but that's me and my family. And at the top is the next generation, so my nieces and nephews. I come from a large family, so we've almost 30 nieces and nephews, half of which are past school leaving age. So 15 are odd of them, they're over 18 and into their mid-20s. Not one of them have went to third level education yet. So I guess why I chose the pictures is I want to challenge this generational conception of class. You know, it doesn't end with me just because I climbed the ladder as such. It's this the generational disadvantage that we need to challenge. If your parents don't go to university, it's very unlikely that you will either. And I know sometimes my story could be sobering, but it's not me, the individual, it's the context of it. And as I alliterate again, it's those hidden injuries of class that we need to explore. And to really challenge that narrative for the next generation. I guess what now, and as we move on today with the next activities, it's, you know, we need to explore how we can expand our inclusion practices. We know that access to education works and it exists, but it's that inclusionary piece. You know, we should be aiming to do ourselves out of a job. Access won't exist anymore and we can all come in and feel inclusive. And also to challenge our unconscious ignorance. And a lot of the time it is unconscious or unknown to us, or they're biases that we don't know we have because society has taught us that way and they're systemically ingrained in us. So I guess my ask today is that you broaden that knowledge and, you know, with the stuff that was shared here today, and raise your own awareness on classism. And I think that's, the last photo on the screen is me and my colleagues in Access and Lifelong Learning. I was lucky enough to grab a photo with them on my graduation from my Masters. And I guess I'm lucky to be part of such a wonderful team, and I'm so proud of the work that they do, and I'm so excited for that journey in my life. As Barbara mentioned earlier, I work on the Cottram na Féine Scholarship with my colleague Fiona Sweeney, and it's such a privilege to be able to work with the students, especially when I look at them and I see the girl like me, and I know that there's supports available. I guess that's where I'm going to end, and I'll open for questions as well.
And that is Marlene Douglas, a really exceptional piece. Well done, Marlene, thank you. We've time for questions.
The first question asks whether Marlene had any difficulty in finding academic literature on the topic of class in Ireland.
Actually, when I was doing my research, a lot of the work was in the UK, and I think obviously it's a bigger population, but it spoke about a lot more there, and a lot of the work that Joe shared already, it's a lot of my references were from the UK. In Ireland, there was a lot of, not a lot of academic work, but I found more in the arts culture, or, you know, the working class storytelling and stuff like that. I don't know if you've ever read the 32, the book of the working class poets and pieces, I guess, short stories. But yeah, I found that the stuff that was published from Ireland was more in that genre than it was in the sociology. I mean, I could be completely wrong, but I used a very narrow literature because it was my story that was the main body of my thesis. So I don't know if my thesis would be the biggest example of exploring Ireland. But what I did do was look at the culture of the language of class, and that's how my thesis started, was analysing that. And I guess in Ireland, you know, with the whole social welfare culture and the social welfare class, that was the big introductory part to my thesis, and analysing that group and the language that we use around them. And that was evident in Ireland through, you know, schemes that we've had even by our local government, and how the social welfare class were treated, and the language that is used. So in a long-winded way of answering your question, yes, a lot of the research is actually coming from the UK.
Question 2 relates to Marlene's experience of encountering unconscious bias, and asks whether she ever got the sense of actually belonging in university.
Yeah, I guess the unconscious bias happened various times throughout my studies, and it would pop up again. Things like, I did a law degree, so particularly Erasmus programs were quite popular, and things like the assumption to be able to afford 6 months rent in a foreign country when you had no disposable income was just crazy for me. I still applied for Erasmus as I got accepted on them, but I never went. I just wanted to have the experience of even doing that. Also applying for internships as a mature student, I found it really challenging on the applications. You know, they wanted to know what primary school you had been to, or your Leaving Cert results. For someone who had did an access programme to gain my place at university, my Leaving Cert was irrelevant. And even filling out the application, I was constantly reminded that this is not for me. They're not looking for me. One of the reasons why I gave up on the law profession and went into more of the social justice side. So I guess those were the times that the unconscious biases would come up again and again. A lot of the language in lectures was talking about this, the bank of mum and dad, or, you know, not directly in that tone, but as if there was a bank of mum and dad that existed. For me, I was a carer to 2 parents, one who passed away during the writing of my Masters, but I was actually a caregiver. And I guess the assumption that I could be a caregiver while being a student was never the language that was used, and that I had all these other responsibilities as well as a part-time job, as well as doing my degree. You know, so I guess that was part of the unconsciousness of the language being used around me. And your other question was the sense of belonging. For me, I love UCD, quite biased. I came to UCD in 2017 and I haven't left. I'm fully and truly institutionalised. But I belonged in academia that I was learning. The power of knowledge was my belonging. I lived in the library. One stage, I think I was in third year, I came to the library and the security guard had told me someone was sitting in my seat. I loved the library. I came onto campus every day during the pandemic because I didn't have a place to study at home. So the university became my home away from home. Belonging wise, I never had the university experience like the typical student who might come in when they're younger or straight from school. You know, I never really made friends as such that you would keep in touch with afterwards. I mean, I was sociable, I'm chatty, and I was part of the mature student society. So I found my belonging in different ways, but where I found my belonging most was the academia and the learning. And I thought, oh, I could do this. The speaking up in class, the engaging in discussion, and people wanting to hear what I had to say. That's where I felt I belonged the most.
Question 3 asks, did law-specific barriers put you off pursuing a career in law?
Thank you. So for me, I actually taught, when I was doing the Access programme, which is Access to Arts, Humanities, Social Sciences and Law, the law bit at the end kept flashing in my mind, like I could access a law degree, like someone like me. And when I went to the careers fair, when I was in the Access programme, I went to the social sciences counters because that's what I was all about. I had done a FET in Youth and Community Studies, I had volunteered in the youth service. I thought I was going to do social science. And then I stumbled across the law with social justice degree. And it was the best of both worlds. I could learn about the law, a world that was so foreign to me, but I could also delve into social justice, which was my passion. And that's why I chose the law degree. So it initially wasn't with the, I want to be a lawyer, but it was also the, I could have a law degree. Like, I have a chance and maybe I should just take it. The more the years went into my degree and I started to learn about FE1s and firsts and GPAs and all that, I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll go down that route. I like to speak, I like to share my story, I like to argue, I'm opinionated, so I probably could have been a good lawyer. But yeah, it was just the financial barriers, the FE1s, the internships, the graduate programs, the not being recognised. I quickly realised, I think by third year, that no, that wasn't where I was going to go because I didn't belong, I didn't fit in. So yeah, that was the reason why I chose the degree.
Okay, I think sadly we're going to have to end there, but as I say, that definitely is not the last we're going to hear of Marlene. I think I agree there's a gap in the literature. I think we're all agreed that you're the woman to fill the gap. And we really can't thank you enough for really, really gracious and eloquent and really important contribution. Fantastic job. Well done.